2, second session. So just let people come in. Thanks so much. So welcome everyone to this spotlight session. This session we're looking at enhancing social systems for urban resilience. So we're looking at, you know, in the other room they're looking at kind of the infrastructure, the physical buildings, and in this session we're talking more about the social systems that underpin the cities and the urban environments in which we live. So just as a little bit of context for this session, you know, we have urban populations are expected to increase in terms of their populations, the number of urban areas, and of course to increase in their climate vulnerabilities in the coming years and decades. You know, we have extreme heat, we have floods, we have storm surges, we have typhoons, and lots of other climate impacts depending on the location of those cities. The IPCC's sixth assessment report was unequivocal on the need to focus our efforts on informal settlements, on the poor, and on the underserved within urban areas. And so in this panel, we're going to explore a little bit more about how we can strengthen the social systems that sort of underpin urban communities in the face of those impacts to enhance resilience. And so the way the panel is going to work, we have 2 presentations to begin with. They're each going to run for about 7 minutes. Then we're going to have, they're looking at examples from Indonesia and from India. And then we're going to have 3 discussants to come up and give their reflections. And then for the rest of the hour, so there'll be about a half an hour there, maybe a little bit less, we'll have Q&A and reflections from the audience. So, you know, we're hoping for some interesting reflections from your own experiences and as well as what you've learned from the presenters. So, I'm going to start with I'm sorry, I should have. I'm going to start by introducing the first of our 2 presenters. We have Professor Amy Young and Professor Wirandari Handiyami, who are respectively from Griffith University and the Universitas Diponegoro in Indonesia. They're here also with a third partner. Excuse me. It's right here. Mega Anggrayani, who's from the NGO that they work with. But we're going to start with Amy, and we wonder if you'd like to come up and give your presentation, please.
Hi. Thank you very much for coming to our session. We just wanted to talk through some work that we've been doing together with CRPP and Bryn. It's funded through the Connexi scheme, which connects Indonesian and Australian researchers on climate and gender. And we were looking at compelled labour, climate change, and keeping a focus on women and children in Java. So for a bit of background, when we use compelled labour, that sits between kind of the informal labour and forced labour. So it's labour that's socially mandated but still has harmful impacts on well-being, and we're particularly interested in the impacts on women and children. We were operating from the understanding, as we've heard from a lot of the discussions today, that all of the social impacts from climate change are interlinked. So we see health impacts, education impacts, impacts on migration, livelihood, and that means that we're really also needing to develop solutions that are holistic and take all of those components into account as well. We are particularly interested in the changes in urban areas and the communities that are left behind or are immobile and choosing to live in those areas. And we had that focus on women and children from 10 to 17 because we really understand that they're cumulative impacts, and the impacts include violence, increased early marriage and risks around school education dropout and health impacts as well. So We did our research in 4 field sites, and today we'll really be focusing mostly on Semarang and Pekalongan, because while all 4 field sites saw similar challenges, it was really Semarang and Pekalongan where we saw solutions from women in the community. So the industries in the livelihood change, we see a lot of fishing, we see a lot of green mussel peeling. In Pekalongan, we see batik industry as well, and they're photos from our field site. So you can see we have almost daily tidal inundation and flooding coming through the communities. So in our research, we found that 80% of the women reported that there is flooding, and that really impacts their household finances and livelihoods. 75% of the women reported that their house had been damaged, and again, that really impacts your livability standards. And children from 10 to 17 reported that there was flooding, which really disrupted their schooling, as well as their opportunities to play and for well-being. We saw, when we asked women about the decisions they've had to make around labour, we saw that they were often taking on informal jobs as their husbands would lose their livelihoods, and these informal jobs are unregulated, often repetitive over a long period of time, and with impacts like smoke inhalation on their bodies as well, and that there were little protections for women. Of the children that we interviewed, almost all worked, and the majority worked every day, and those who were youngest worked the longest hours in the most hazardous conditions. So I'll just talk through the gendered impacts of our study, and then I'll hand over to Wee to talk about the solutions, which is why we're here. So the impacts that we saw were real gendered impacts. So women and children being compelled to work. And we saw as men were losing their livelihoods and women were stepping up and trying to make up the gap, that those shift in gender roles exacerbated things like domestic violence in the household and put real stress on families. Women reported physical and mental health challenges due to climate change and those work impacts. And women felt unrepresented in decision-making bodies, especially regarding flood mitigation strategies, even though they had really good understandings of climate change.
Thank you, Amy. Allow me to continue. Despite the impact, there's some initiative has been going on and lead to kind of good practices based on our result, such as the urban farming, initiated by the local women groups. I think some of this initiative already been mentioned in our earlier discussion this morning. And women is also work in the local industry. We call it as a batik, and unfortunately we didn't wear the batik from the area today. Despite most of them still really very much depend on the fishery sectors. Amy already mentioned about the green mussel peeler and also fish drying. Let me talk a bit more on that in the later slides, but other than maybe some positive activities appear in the research area, we have still has to deal with the several policy challenges. For example, the slow onset disasters, because our research area is on the coastal, and most of them experience tidal flood and also land subsidence. This kind of slow onset disaster is not really become a priority at the moment for the local government because of different reasons. We can discuss a little bit later about this. And there's not significant or robust rated policy is available. There's still relocations happening, but it hasn't come up with a concrete positive impact on such retreat policy or relocation that has been happening with different approach in our 3 different locations. There's also still no integrated development between we have been mentioned also this morning about the infrastructural initiative to build the sea dikes and so on in combination with kind of women empowerment program. It still be incremental approach. And yeah, in addition to this no priority scale for responding to the most vulnerable and damaged area. Basically, there's also an issue to the policy related to the adaptive social security. So yeah, we propose what we call as in situ adaptations as a good alternative option for them, because other than their vulnerable situation, it has been proved that they can work together on certain different initiatives ranging from, we have mentioned about the urban farming, waste bank, small-scale organizations in industry, disaster preparedness groups, in addition to the infrastructural approach. Yeah, so it still require integration among different approaches for sure. And other than in situ adaptation, we also learned that inclusive adaptation is also important, basically learn from the empowering women and children. We highlight the practicability, policy, and inclusivity. So practicability, women is important in decision making. They have been working actively in the neighborhood, for example. Alternative livelihood is also important to empowering the source of income for sure. At the policy level, holistic climate change law and revised disaster management law is still important, at least for the Indonesian context, followed by the adaptive local-led programs, adaptation strategies, adaptive social security, social protection, and so on. And last but not least, we need to maintain the inclusivity. So collaboration and support, finance and capacity building is very important. So in a way, we need to combine, the government initiative with all the infrastructural priority that likely still happening now in many Indonesian cities, need to be combined with all empowering program from below or from the community. I think that's all from us. Thank you very much for your kind attention. I hope I didn't miss anything. Okay.
Thank you both so much. Thank you both very much, and we'll have you both back up here in a few minutes to have the Q&A. But first, I'd like to invite Bharati Bonsal and Rajaswani Gorana from Mahila Housing Trust, who are going to give the second presentation about their experiences in India. Thank you very much. Yes. If you just press this one, it will click you through this one. Yes.
Hello everyone, I am Rajeshwari Gorana, representing the women who we work for, informal sector women. Why do we call them informal sector? Because they're working in their homes. Home is a workplace for them, and they're also working out of homes. And so, that is why we say we work with the informal sector women. Our work started as working for meeting the needs or inadequacies of the women, but then slowly we realized that they have a big role to play in shaping urban development itself. And more when we start doing work, we realize that they can be catalysts for sustainable development of cities. Of course, it's not an easy process. You need to have collectives. Like this morning, someone was saying that you need to have common interest groups. So forming these collectives is important, and you also need to build their capacities and have partnerships that matter to this entire process. How do we see ourselves as an organization? We see as a link between the community and the government, and that is how we try and organize our work. Of course, the kind of interventions or thematic areas are quite diverse in urban, but we actually look at these. That's the scope of our work. Once again, coming back, what do we need? We need social aspects. To focus on the social aspects, we need to look at finances, because for a long time, all work in urban just focused on raising awareness. And the women that we work with ask, where are the solutions? Where is a financial solution? Where is a technical solution? So I think focusing on the financial aspects is important. And the technical is, how do you demystify governance? How do you demystify climate change? How do you bring technical expertise, of related to governance and also hard solutions? That is where we work. So this is how we also look at our work. Or, these are three essential pillars that, we need to focus on. Doing any one will not yield the result that we would want to see. Okay, I'll come back to how do we work at the social level. We go out into communities, sit with them, understand their requirements, and after an amount of trust building, we form the community-based organizations. And the kind, India is a very populous country. That how do you look at what numbers can you work with? Around 200 to 250 families we bring together, make a community-based organization, and by that time we realize that many of the women develop, show potential leadership. They really want to work for their communities. They want to engage with the city governments. We call them the community action group leaders, and then start working with them. And at some point, we also realized that just looking at household solutions and area level solutions will not work. You also need to federate them at the city level so that you can start talking to the governments and, of course, any other organizations. In fact, we bring academics, technical solution providers, financial, whoever, who has interest in urban systems, we bring them together. So that's our model. Now we'll hand this over to Bharti Ben, my colleague, who works on the ground. She is the grassroots, leader here, who works, we are taking this example of Amalner city, and she'll walk you through that, and then I'll come back again.
Thank you, Rajiben. Amalner is a tier 2 city in India with having 100,000 population. These cities have less finance, technical and social capacities, but they are going fast. So we need to work in these cities. We were invited by Maharashtra state government to work in Amalner for their program, Swachh Bharat Mission program, that is Clean India Mission. I was also want to thank Maharashtra government here because they believe in us and invited us for the for implementing the program. After 2 years, grassroots women leaders, city government, and MHT realized that the issue of water scarcity had to be addressed if program like Clean India Mission have to sustain. In Amalner, water is supplied once in 5 to 6 days. Our women leaders said that to sustain OD-free status, water problem has to be addressed. So, MHT, city government, and the grassroots women leaders sat together to find the localized solutions. Because MHT is a socio-technical organization, we believe in solutions. So we developed a detailed project report, a new regime of water management in Amalner. It had the strategy and the finance required for systematic implementation. The DPR was made using 3R approach. Apart from our CAG, CBO model, the women were trained as water managers. They understand what is water cycle, what is water recharge, aquifers, water quality and quantity, and also climate change. They mapped their defunct water sources with geospatial mapping in their communities and worked with community and MHT to revive and maintain the water sources. CAG supports city government in collectively collecting water taxes. So you see the tangible, this shows a healthy partnership between city government and communities. You can see the tangible improvements here. 19 wells rejuvenated with roof rainwater harvesting system. Energy cost was one of the main reason for pumping sufficient water. Solarization reduced energy cost by 73%. They give more individual water connections to urban poor. And now city government also starts to think about solarizing water operations. They decided to look after the maintenance of the rejuvenated wells and identify a climate resilience officers as well. Now I want to highlight that this initiative is a good example of equitable and sustainable water resilience. To develop such localized solutions, a good partnership is required between community, local government, and civil societies. So this is our story of Amalner work. So now, Rajivan.
I'll quickly take you through this work. It is in Jodhpur in Rajasthan. Yes, thanks. We did this work in Jodhpur in Rajasthan, and the outcome is an inclusive heat action plan. Once again, I'll go back to MHT's approach. How do we work in the climate sector? We build communities' capacity to understand their vulnerabilities, so map them at a very hyper-local level, and then move them towards risk reduction, and that's the way it is. And for this, you need to develop a lot of locally relevant and pro-poor climate solutions. Solutions are not there, out there, So we need to invest in this, and then, of course, support them in, implementing their own resilience actions. And from here, take it to how do you influence the policies and the practices at the municipal level. That's how we work. Jodhpur is one of the hottest cities in India. It's in the northwestern part, close to the desert. And, the trends are not anything, happy to be about. And it's only increasing the heat risk. And then what did we do? Because of our work with the communities where you actually have those institutions, the CBOs and CAGs, your conversations are graduating from just, drainage, housing, lighting, etc., to even climate risks. And so what happened was in one season when these discussions went on, they said that really something needs to be done for heat. And they said that we really would want to go and ask the community to the municipality to do something about it. And that is how they made a representation to the city government asking, please do something for heat. So you see here how the transition has happened. It's not about household level, or area level intervention, but a city level intervention. So their own understanding graduated to that level. And of course, the heat action plan processes were set on because we were there, we worked with the Natural Resource Defense Council, and then the processes started. But what does inclusion do? What happened when the risk assessment had to be made, you see the sensitivity. We are covering labor chowks, access to, parks, etc. These things would not come into the heat action if you just did sitting somewhere with your desk with the weather data. Because we were with the communities, they told us, we don't know where to spend our afternoons when it's absolutely hot. So we got these integrated into the, assessment itself. So that is what inclusion does. It makes it more closer to the context, and I think equity, inclusion, all that happens without much effort. Of course, what did this do? Because women went out and collected the data, it really gave a realistic picture, and then in the heat action plan, we could identify areas by the wards. And high-risk wards are those in the red, and then the moderate and the low. Now, what did this kind of a classification do? The municipality now knows where water supply or, heat action measures have to be propped up during the heat wave season. So, you are using your limited resources very well so that you take care of the risks. Of course, the interesting thing is heat action plans in India are pretty old. I mean, we already had one in the city that I come from, Ahmedabad, in 2015, but they always focused on health readiness or a public health point of view. Now, if you kept doing that, it's fine. But you also need to look at near term and other solutions, which are equally important. By doing, by talking to women, we understood that, you need to address, urban heat island effect itself, because these are informal, sector, they're vegetable vendors, etc. They said it becomes difficult for us to work out. So what happens is greening comes in then. And then we do it very systematically. Then we also did in Jodhpur what is called the cooling station. Informal sector women are out. They don't have a place to sit in during the heat wave time. So we designed this cooling station. It is a net zero station. It had solar power. It had water, etc. And women could the most important thing. Sorry. The most important thing is how do you reduce exposure? And so this cooling station is one. And then, of course, cool roofs are important. Interestingly, all these got into the heat action plan. And this is the pathway to policy. And you see now, I think all the actors will start focusing on what are those aspects that have to be built in, even if it is incrementally, into policy making for heat action. Thank you so much. And I stop here.
Thank you so much. I'm really pleased to see both of these presentations really focusing on the solutions. These can be really overwhelming sets of challenges that we've got here, and yeah, it's very heartening and very practical. Gives us some real meat to kind of think about for the rest of us in the room. So from there, I'd really love to ask our three discussants to come up and give their reflections. So we have, first off, we have Bupavan Kiomekse, who's the Director of the Regional Development and Environment Policy. Please, if you could come up, that would be great. We have Sabina Lama, who's the Program Manager of Disaster Risk and Reduction and Climate Resilience at Lumanti Support Group for Shelter from Nepal. And we have Ariane Oligario, who's a gender specialist in the Urban Resilience Trust Fund at the Asian Development Bank. Ariane, are you here? Yeah, great. Thanks so much.
Talk about the, the social systems. So the many examples, come up with very clearly. So I just want to focus on a few things. The role of the women, organizing, mobilizing, and, federate, and find out the solution are the key things that I have taken from both the presenters. So just to add on how this, this social system works, I just want to give a few examples that also came in the India's presentation, that how collaboration and coordination with the government, CSOs and communities really work and come up with the solution. So I just want to give the one example from Nepal. So we are working with the informal settlement and also with the low-income families. And we also work with the disaster risk reduction and climate preparedness in the urban center. So in one of the municipality where we did, we had a very good partnership there, and how social structure work is that we could able to prove that during the 2015 earthquake, because all the social systems were in the place, like organized youths, organized women groups, task force, and the like the first aiders, and everyone was set up there. So after the earthquake, they are the one who immediately mobilized to resolve and save the lives of the people. So this is very important to have this kind of social system in a place. So other examples are that I'm really happy to hear from both the presenters that they really focused on the women's empowerment and also the women-led solutions. And we, as a Wire Commission, and also our organization back in Nepal, it's been like 30 years. We are working with the different organized groups like informal settlers, low-income families, and socially excluded families. And there are lots of solutions. It's not only related to the climate change, but also with the other sectoral interventions. So there are lots of practices and is there. And what I really want to emphasize is that we really need to we really need to have a better coordination to enhance the system. And one more thing is the whatever system that's set in the place that should be recognized, because it's not that somehow, like we only talk about the macro level and we forget the micro level. So there are lots of important initiatives and solutions in micro level also that should be considered, recognized, and collaborate with all the like sectoral partners. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Sabina. Bupapan, if you wanted to add your reflections, please.
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Bupavan Kamisai from Ministry of Planning and Investment from Lao PDR. I'm working on the Development Research and Institute. I'm happy to be here. Actually, I'm not expert, but I have some experience to share a little bit and reflect about the to presented. That's very interesting and good lesson learned from the two presentation. And regarding to the enhancing the system or for urban climate resilience in Lao PDR, no, we focusing on the four areas. The first one is strengthening institutes' capacity, is to develop the capacity of national and local authority to enhance the resilience of human settlement and infrastructure system. This can include about the tech and training and technical training and training and as a trainer and collaboration with relevant sectors. And the second one is community and capacity building to empower community to improve their well-being with health condition by developing local reasons and strategy. And building an individual and community capacity to cope with climate impact is essential for enhancing resilience. And this can involve training program and skill building and initiative and development and of local leadership to lead adapt effort. And third, we focus on resilience and infrastructure to enhance and climate and disaster resilient infrastructure system in human settlement. And the fourth, knowledge about knowledge management and advocacy is to ensuring complying with standard for knowledge and management advocacy and monitoring. Also, I will give the example of the about urban development in Laos. We have some project in the south of Laos, supported by ADB, which called Pakse Urban Environmental Improvement Project. The impact of the project is to improve competitiveness of Pakse as regional economic and tourism center in the south of Lao PDR. And the priority of the project is to improve solid waste management, improve urban drainage, and riverbank protection, and institutional capacity development and strengthening. And another project I'm involved with the relate to the women and children. We are not focusing on the urban, but we are focusing on the women in the rural area, because Lao PDR has the high percent of poverty and has a problem. So we focus on poverty reduction in the rural area. The project that I involved is focused on children and pregnant women in the rural area, which we give them the and they call condition cash transfer. Is focused on the pregnant women to give them for the good nutrition and also the children under 2. It's 1,000 day and under 2. This focus on the nutrition and solving reduce about the wasting and stunting of the women or children. Yes, and regarding to the community development, it's very important to capacity building them to involve the activity as much as they can, and also I'm concerned about the how to say receiving the information and receiving about understanding of why to join this project. Some people they don't understand that when the project come to their communities, just okay, just join, and then when they finish the project and maybe they come back as they and be before the project as well. This we also concern as well for the target and people. Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much. So, you know, we can really see through both of these examples from Nepal and from Laos, that kind of keeping on with the theme from the presentations of focusing on women and children, and how important these sort of social elements, the parts of community that pull us together, are important for the broader urban resilience. Ariane, could I ask you, given you're with the Urban Resilience Trust Fund at ADB, to share your thoughts?
Thank you. So I come from a generation where we use mnemonics. We don't have much Google or internet, so I did come up with a mnemonics to summarize some of the findings here, and it's ACE. ACE. Okay, so it's really finding that adaptive model. And when we mean adaptive model, this is what I've learned from the very inspiring presentations. I want to work there. Oops, sorry, I was still in ADB, but very inspiring work. Adaptive and access. When we say adaptive, it needs to be inclusive and accessible. What I've learned from what they've shared, the women have shared, is that it's also very important that accessibility is not doing any harm, and that it includes everybody or leaves no one behind, already targeting 2 of the major SDGs. Then the design should be, for it to be adaptive, it needs to be holistic. And that is reflected in the policies and also in the practices. And then that's where we find solutions. Solutions that can be grounded from community, or solutions grounded from the government itself, from the policies that you have designed. But it is through that adaptive listening, but also that adaptive speaking up through movement. And that's where my next letter comes in, convergence. When the convergence of women comes in, that movement building happens. And that's when the empowerment, that's when they start to speak up. That's when they start that confidence. And once we have that movement building, as I was listening to the women speak earlier, maybe that's where the scale will happen. Maybe the scale that we're always looking and finding for any solutions to happen is through that movement. And through that movement, maybe we will begin to share information more clearly. And through that movement and convergence, we remove the silos, and that we use existing solutions. This ACE principle that this came up in the earlier meetings, the earlier discussions, because we're saying the same things. So maybe it's only the point of convergence that really needs to happen now. And once we find that point of convergence, maybe we get to empower ourselves, empower one another. And maybe the solutions becomes more transformative, more sustainable. And we get conversations that provide answers, conversations that define solutions, solutions that are sustainable, solutions that are tangible. And that's one of the words that stood out, tangible and practical. I mean, I'm sitting here talking and thinking, I was like, how do I address heat? And the women from India has already done that. It's like, why am I gonna, think of new ways when there's solutions that are very rooted, very practical, and very tangible. And maybe that's where we get to ACE. The ACE, a more transformative solutions. Maybe that's where we get to ACE scale. And that maybe we can one day ACE adaptation against climate change. So that's it for me.
Thanks so much, Ariane. I loved the bit of inspiration, and I would also love to just emphasize that tangible and practical from all of the presentations so far, particularly in that context of scaling up, that recognizing that sometimes we already have solutions that we can just replicate as the first step towards scaling up. We don't have to go from the small scale to the global in a single step. Replication is a really important part of that, and having good models to replicate is essential for that. But if I could now, thank you so much to our 3 discussants. Please stay there in case people have questions for you, and I'm going to ask our 4 speakers to come and join you up here. And then if you could come and join us, so that anyone from the audience who has questions or comments, I would ask you to keep them relatively short so that other people might have a chance as well. But if people have questions or comments that they'd love to share, if you could let us know your name and where you're from, and if you want to direct your question to someone in particular, that would be great. Bob, did you want to start us off?
Yes, thank you very much. Thanks very much for your very interesting presentation. I have a question to I was wondering, so you talked about the solutions.
Bob, sorry, can I just get you to speak up? And if there's someone from IT who help us, I can't get any of these other mics to work. That would be great. Thank you. Maybe I'll just take that away. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And my next question is for Bharati. So I was wondering, you talked about the locally generated heat action plan. If you could talk us through the handover. So when, the local community prepared that action plan, and how did the government accept? So what happened to it? Did they accept all the solutions that were given to them? Did they go through it and sort of decided, to implement those that are more feasible, the ones that they liked or didn't like, So I was wondering how, does that transfer happen automatically, or is there a sort of filtering process?
Thanks so much. So maybe we'll start with you, Amy.
Sure thing. No, thank you so much. So the second part of our research was holding roundtables with community and government. So we brought community members together and government together to really work through what the problems were and what the solutions were, and get them to prioritise what their top 3 were in each group. So a lot of the initiatives that we outlined there, so urban farming, waste banks, came out really strongly from the women and their community groups. It wasn't only women in the room, so we did also have a lot of infrastructure, and that was mainly brought up by male participants as well. So yeah, we are now working on phase 2 of the project, where we're hoping to bring government from national, provincial and local level together and feed the community into those solutions as well. So that's to come. Yeah.
Yeah, so my response is, the way we did it was, communities were always part of the heat action development process, and each stakeholder had to tell what is important that needs to get into the plan itself. So the municipality had some priorities, and the communities had certain priorities. All of them, were brought in on a mutually agreeable and a doable basis. And that is how the heat action plan got developed. But we did not stop it there. Plans are plans, they're on paper, but how do you transition them to action? That was where I think MHT played its role. As I told you, all these need finances. You have to sometimes leverage the municipal finances and sometimes get external. And so where possible, we leveraged the municipal, cash and kind both. For instance, the land, the space, all of that was given by the municipality, and where we really required out-of-pocket expenses to be built, we reached out to various partners and they got it in, and then started implementing the solutions and then track the learnings, and in the implementation part, the communities played a very important role. So if you're doing cool roofs, how do you do it? What is the model that you have? Because, cool roof paints also require money. They need effort. Someone needs to, how do you build capacities for that? And how do you leverage public housing systems so that you actually, cool roofs can be done much more than just individuals putting their money or, grant funding doing it. That was one. And when it came to the cooling station, now we are asking, what is it that the municipality brings in and what can the communities do? So what's happening is the place was given by the municipality, MHT, because it's a socio-technical organization, worked with designers in the urban planning, School of Architecture, and got the design, and then the women are running it now. So that's how we started designing. And for the nature-based solutions, which is urban heat island effect, we are trying to bring in an urban livelihood model. So the land has been given by the municipality. We are roping in biodiversity expert to say what are the trees that need to be planted, because you can't do just afforestation. But what do you do? And then how do you turn it into a livelihood generating activity? That's how we are doing it. Yeah, I hope I answered you. Yeah.
Yeah.
And in our pilot solarizing, we did the solarized water treatment plants, and then municipality itself doing the detailed project reports for their another water treatment plants also. In this way, they scaling up the solution.
So this is an example of how you're mutually learning from each other. Now municipalities are also stepping up their work in climate.
Such an important example about the importance of having all of those different players and actors and bringing the partnership together. Yeah, thanks so much. Other questions, please?
Hello, I'm RJ from the Philippines. I would like to ask actually Amy about, because you have findings about the child labor and the child marriage. Would you like to expound about it more? And how would like to proceed with those kind of risk of children and of children especially? And then for both of you, like how do you include those women with disabilities, other kinds of sectors like indigenous people and older person in what you're doing? Like how do you have other flexible program model? And last, in that case, if there's a disaster, what would be your mood in all your programs? Like, for example, for your SMEs, for your urban farming, what will be your appropriate program when it comes to disaster already? That's all.
Thank you very much. So I'll just talk through the child side, and then I'll hand over to Prof. Wiwi, who is much better at the disaster management side. So we went in with a view of including children, and we didn't go in necessarily asking questions about early marriage or domestic and family violence. It came up as we went through. I think the risk of dropping out of school, and it wasn't that families didn't value school, it was that flooding came in, poverty exacerbated, children needing to stay home and assisting the family, then put financial pressures on the household, which led to things like risks of early marriage, risks to children in labour, in carrying heavy things, using tools that were sharp and could hurt. So I think what really came out for us was that women wanted, children to be involved in a whole of family kind of approach. but it's just putting some safeguarding kind of around that and making sure that we're keeping that community cohesion and social cohesion, and it's not crossing into something that might harm our children moving forward. Yeah.
Thank you for the questions. I just want to add on what your question about the children and women. So what we did is kind of combination qualitative and ethnographic approach. So we try to understand the community. It's not like a short-term research. We include our local NGO partner we have here who has been working so long. So I think that kind of initial work is also important. And in addition to that, it's also important on the role of the local champion or the local leader, so that's why when we work with community, that's like one size does not fit all, so every community, they have their own, and it's very important for us to understand that, especially when we deal with specific, like the disabled and also the women and children, the vulnerable people. Goes to your next questions. I think the most important solutions that can combine with, the co-benefit one, when we can maintain the environment and at the same time, somehow it has economic value. So even it's not much, but West Bank sounds more promising in a way because it can combine between the concept of maintaining the environment, the neighborhood, but also promising that they have not a lot but money from the activity. Urban farming is also similar. So what we're thinking on how the solution is not only with like SMEs, sounds like very economic oriented, but how they can maintain that the livelihood, the neighborhood. So we need to find the kind of co-benefit value. I hope that answers your questions. Yeah.
Yes, thanks very much. We probably have time for one last question. I'm going to go from down the front here.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jean from the UNFCCC Regional Collaboration Center for Asia and the Pacific, and I'm working as the Climate Action and Adaptation Specialist. So the discussion's quite interesting. We've been discussing about women, gender, children, but I'm also particularly interested in knowing about the youth engagement. Because when we talk about collaboration and coordination, we also mentioned inclusivity. And since we're talking about urban, my colleague from the Philippines also mentioned about indigenous people. So these are the things that maybe it's interesting to know how we are also considering them and the social systems that we're discussing right now. There are a lot of youth-led initiatives that may also be considered as solutions or that can actually lead into concrete solutions that can be undertaken by communities as well. And I think that especially in Asia Pacific, that houses 60% of the total youth population around the world, I think it is important to also tap into these potentials of the youth. There are a lot of initiatives that builds their skills, that allows them to be more creative. They have the creativity, they have the energy to participate in the transformation, the innovation that we all need. And I think that they can also support building the sustainability of all of this. So so some examples, youth are taking part on research and discussions on, for example, green building, building greener environment. They're also being part of the discussions on industries, educational systems, making this more accessible and equitable. So while most of the youth are actually engaged in advocacy work and some of the youth-led initiatives that may be existing in your country, in your specific communities, there are also initiatives wherein, for example, for Asia Pacific countries, there is a youth empowerment and climate action Platform, or YECAP, among other initiatives that actually help build capacities of the youth to be more meaningfully engaged in climate action and climate policy work. So I think there's also a potential for them to support the work in linking community-led initiatives with the government. So maybe if anyone from our leaders in front that can share how youth are actually taking part, that would also be appreciated.
So the youth, young women are part of the community-based vulnerability assessments, where they actually, pick up tools and then say, engage with the area level issues. So, young women or youth are part of this process, vulnerability. We call them adolescent girls. Adolescent girls, they're part of this. And then also we take them as part of the risk reduction. So, risk reduction is just need not be always technical or financial. It also has behavioral aspects. So how do you take care of your water, etc.? So these adolescent girls are involved in those processes where they go door to door with messaging or ensuring that, there is a kind of monitoring, let us say, in the Clean India Mission work or in,
geospatial mapping of water resources. They are techno-savvy. So they did this work very intelligently and joyfully.
Please.
Just to add on your concern, yes, youth groups are the one of the like the potential social system for the, like climate resilience, in not only in urban, but in all the areas. So we do have some experiences and how we have mobilized actually the youth groups to support the women leaders, particularly for the word that she mentioned, the techno-savvy. It's very, a very catchy word. So it's like they are the one who can support, for the data collection or the risk mapping, preparing report, and also we are trying to build the, like the efforts of both women and the youth for to identify and all. So it's continue.
Thanks, Professor Weaver, please.
Yeah, just a brief example. What you mentioned reminds me with, if some of Indonesian here knows about Karang Taruna. So Karang Taruna is a national program that established in every neighborhood. And we also include them during our research, how to empower them. And most of the Karang Taruna member are also women. And it's good in a way they can support the older generation in technology and using the social media. So yeah, I think it's very important to include this in the social system.
Yeah, thanks so much. And it's such a great point to finish us on, this kind of idea of who's taking us forward, the next generation, but also recognizing, I think one of the themes that came through from all of the presentations was about the importance of building off what is already there, that there are these great social systems that already exist, community groups, women's groups, youth groups that are out there that are able, with just a tiny little bit of additional input from outside to be empowered to create these great solutions. And so, I feel very hopeful and very optimistic with this very solutions-focused panel. So I hope you'll join with me again in thanking. Oh, we've got one more intervention, please.
Just quickly, I forgot it during the presentation. When you work with social systems, and these are, let us say the governance and the communities, what's important is, I think, trust building. And in our Amalne work, what happened was, there was always this tussle between administration, city administration, and the low-income communities, because they, the city government said that they always land up on our doorstep and they're making issue about waste collection, water, and so there was a confrontational approach. But once we started working together, this confrontational approach changed into a collaborative approach. I think each was understanding the other's challenge, and they were genuinely trying to do, solve problems. So you see confrontation become collaboration, and the trust building is immense when you go to Amalner now. So otherwise they would keep the poor away, they will not let them into the offices, but now it's like, come take a chair, sit with us and listen to us. So there's no, I think one of the things when working across social systems is that if you work in this way, trust, which is actually missing comes back.
Yes, thank you. I thought we were going to end on hope, but instead we're ending on trust. And when, we're here for the Community Resilience Partnerships program, and that trust for building those partnerships is such an important point if we're going to build the resilience of communities. So if you would, join me again, please, in thanking all of our panelists and discussants. And I believe now we're moving into the, I forgot what they're called, not spotlights, but there are 3 rooms. Please, Alex. Working groups, 1 of 3 working groups. So there's about 2 minutes to pick your room and move on. Thanks, everyone.